Hello and welcome to another TLDR global video. While Brazil's next presidential election is still some way away, in recent days the contest has already begun to hot up, with corruption charges against former President Lula quashed. He's more or less been given the green light to run again in 2022. The question being how we've got to this point, why Lula's role in the next election is so important, and whether Lula or Bolsonaro is best positioned to win the presidency come October 2022. So, in this video, we'll try and answer those questions. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Doing so helps us out, and it also means that you get updated every time we release a new video. Thank you so much for your support. This story starts all the way back in 2014 with Operation Car Wash. In March 2014, the federal police in Brazil launched an investigation into money laundering. The investigation was originally quite small scale, focusing on black market money dealers using small businesses as fronts to launder cash. One of the first small businesses being targeted by the investigation was a small petrol station. While the station didn't actually have a full-blown car wash, at least according to the BBC, it did have a few hoses, and due to the apt wordplay about cleaning money, the media latched onto it, hence the codename Operation Car Wash. The investigation didn't stop with one car washless petrol station though, because as the federal police began digging into a web of businesses, they noticed a common link. The money launderers had been working on behalf of the Director of Refining and Supply at the state-run oil company Petrobras. With a state company now in the mix, the investigation kicked up a gear, and before long, a system of kickbacks had been uncovered. Executives at Petrobras would overpay contractors for the work they'd done, on the proviso that these contractors kicked back between 1 to 5% of every deal into secret funds. With that money, the Petrobras executives allegedly further kicked back money to the politicians that appointed them, ultimately funding these politicians' election campaigns. And all of this together is a textbook case of bribery. When the operation finally came to a close in February of this year, there were some 295 arrests, 278 convictions, and 4.3 billion reais had been captured. But what does this whole thing have to do with Brazil's former president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, more affectionately just known as Lula? Well, Petrobras played a big role in both politics and society. According to The Guardian, more than an eighth of all investments in Brazil came from Petrobras, with the company forming business ties with the likes of Rolls-Royce and Samsung. Due to the wide reach of the company, investigations began looking at whether the former president knew about the kickbacks, and whether he had personally stuck his hands in. After further investigation, Lula was found guilty of corruption and money laundering charges, and sentenced to 9.5 years in prison, having, according to the presiding judge, accepted bribes from an engineering company in the form of a beachfront apartment, so long as they got government contracts. Upon appeal, the sentence was actually increased further to 12 years and 1 month, with a further 13-year sentence being added on top in February 2019 for corruption. Before this though, Lula was a staggeringly popular president, coming into office as Brazil's first leftist leader for 50 years. This continued throughout his presidency, with Lula leaving office with a government approval rating of 80% and a personal approval rating of 87%. His government was, according to many, responsible for lifting millions of Brazilians out of poverty through the family allowance, as well as increasing Brazil's standing on the international stage and ensuring continued economic growth. This overwhelming popularity made him wish to run for presidency yet again in 2018, something that at first looked almost certain to happen. Despite him being in jail at the time, his party, the Workers' Party, nominated him for the 2018 presidential election, with polling at the time suggesting that he had nearly double the support of his other rivals. The issue being that Lula was in jail at the time, and as such there was a lot of discussion about whether he was even eligible to run. At one point, the UN Human Rights Committee intervened, ruling that Lula could not be disqualified until at least all legal avenues for appeal had been exhausted. Brazil's top electoral court ruled, however, that the UN's recommendation could not overrule Brazil's clean state law, which prevents, among other things, those who are being convicted of corruption from standing in elections, a law brought in by Lula himself. So, with Lula disqualified, the field was wide open for the right-wing populist Bolsonaro to win, which he did. Fast forward to the present day. On the 8th of March 2021, a Supreme Court judge annulled Lula's convictions, ruling that the federal court where Lula had been originally tried didn't have the appropriate jurisdiction, paving the way for the restoration of his political rights. Fashion did not, however, judge the merits of the case, rather saying that the original court didn't have jurisdiction, meaning that Lula could be tried again in Brasilia if the Attorney General so wishes. Alternatively, the decision could be overruled by the full Supreme Court. The Attorney General has already publicly stated that they'll be appealing Fashion's ruling, but for now, Lula is eligible to run again next year. In fact, Lula's more than just eligible. He continues to be popular. An IBEC poll prior to the judge's ruling put 50% of people as saying that they'd be definitely or probably likely to vote for Lula, compared to 38% for Bolsonaro. So it looks like if Lula is allowed to run, he could be serious competition for Bolsonaro. This has led some to worry that Bolsonaro could be set for a significant policy change. That's because despite Lula playing down suggestions that he will run again, many see Lula as a genuinely credible threat to Bolsonaro's chances of re-election. Brazil's largest financial paper, Economic Value for one, led with the headline, "Lula is back in the game," with Lula Presidente 2022 quickly doing the rounds on Twitter. Such a groundswell of support has led many to claim that Bolsonaro will now abandon any pretense of economic reform and move further towards the populist right to try and ensure re-election. Alfredo Mendes, managing partner at Arma Capital, told Reuters that with Lula eligible, the chance of this current government going totally towards populism increases even more, something that other commentators are already claiming is happening. An example of this is towards the tail end of February, Bolsonaro removed the chief executive of Petrobras, yes, the same Petrobras at the centre of the car wash operation, in the first of a suite of more interventionist measures. Anyway, while Lula isn't formally a populist in the academic sense, he does seem to tick most of the boxes when it comes to charisma. So having two populist or populist-esque leaders competing for presidency next year, one on the left and one on the right, would make for a truly divisive campaign. In 2018, these divisions were already tense, culminating in the stabbing of Bolsonaro. In 2022, they're set to be even more so. Because while Lula has retained a loyal following among some, for others he's become the pure embodiment of corruption that was unearthed in the investigation that barred him from running back in 2018. Bolsonaro, on the other hand, hasn't exactly increased in favourability over the last few years, because Bolsonaro's eldest son himself was implicated and investigated for money laundering, and Bolsonaro's response to the coronavirus has been seen by some as lacklustre. So, going into this potential head-to-head, both sides have loyal supporters and fervent critics. Claudio Couto, a prominent political scientist, stressed back in 2018, Bolsonaro was a sniper firing at everyone. This time, he's going to be a target. With Lula's legal eligibility to run still not 100% nailed down and appeals still on the cards, only time will tell whether the former president will be able to run, and whether Brazil wants Lula back at the helm once more. But what do you think? Is Brazil's clean state law something that all countries should adopt? Should Lula be allowed to run once more? And moreover, should he become president in 2022? As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that's in the description.